Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into something that's really going to make you think. It's the idea that there might be, well, some inconsistencies with the globe model of the Earth.
Now, before anyone starts thinking we've gone completely off the rails here, we're going to be looking at historical accounts, architecture, even some scientific concepts.
Right.
And these suggest that maybe, just maybe, our understanding of the Earth's history and maybe even its shape could use a second look.
It really is like putting on a new pair of glasses and seeing things in a whole new light. Like we're so used to seeing the world in a certain way, it's easy to miss things that don't quite fit.
Exactly. And that's what this deep dive is all about. We want to encourage you to question those assumptions, explore different perspectives.
So let's jump right in. Our first stop, the architectural marvels of the 19th century.
Okay.
I mean, we've all seen pictures of these amazing structures, right? The Arc de Triomphe, St. Basil's Cathedral, the Crystal Palace.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible. But here's the thing. They were built alongside what we probably consider, well, primitive infrastructure.
Yeah.
Think muddy roads, horse-drawn carriages.
You're making a great point. It's almost like finding a smartphone in a medieval village. Doesn't quite add up.
Exactly. So how is it that these societies, without the tools and technology we have today, were able to create such sophisticated buildings?
It's a question that's baffled researchers for years.
Yeah.
Some say we've underestimated the ingenuity of our ancestors. Others think we may have the timeline of technological advancement wrong.
So maybe there were times when technology was more advanced than we realized, and it was somehow lost and then rediscovered.
It's definitely a possibility.
Like those stories of ancient civilizations with incredible knowledge that vanished. But if that's true, where did all that advanced technology go? And why haven't we found more evidence of it?
Great questions. And they bring us to another fascinating piece of this puzzle: buried architecture. All over the world, we find structures, sometimes even entire cities, that seem to be partially or even completely buried underground.
You're talking about places like the Sohosen Church in Germany or the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It looks like the ground level has risen over time, burying the lower parts of the buildings.
You got it. The common explanation is that it's just natural soil buildup over centuries. But some researchers believe it's something more dramatic. Like, what if something happened that basically reset civilization and buried these magnificent structures?
You're talking about a global cataclysmic event, a massive flood or a volcanic eruption maybe, something that could have reshaped the Earth's surface and buried entire civilizations under layers of mud and debris.
It's a theory. And while it may sound a bit like a disaster movie, there is evidence suggesting that Earth has experienced such events in its past.
Right, like all those ancient myths and legends about great floods that wiped out civilizations. So are you suggesting that those myths might be based on actual events?
It's a possibility worth exploring.
Yeah.
What if our ancestors were trying to tell us about a forgotten past? A time before the world as we know it was reshaped?
That's a really intriguing thought. And if there was a global reset, could it also explain another mystery of the 19th century? The orphan trains.
The orphan trains.
Yeah, for those who don't know, this was a period in the 19th century when thousands of children, many who actually had living parents, were sent from cities on the East Coast to rural areas, mostly in the Midwest and West.
Interesting.
And the official explanation is usually that it was because of overcrowding in orphanages, giving these kids better opportunities. But the sheer number of children involved, the families being separated, and the lack of good records, it all raises some questions.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Some researchers even suggest that these kids weren't really orphans in the traditional sense.
Really?
They think these children were maybe survivors of a lost civilization, a generation that was displaced by some catastrophic event and needed to be resettled. It kind of fits with that whole global reset idea.
It does, doesn't it? It makes you wonder, if such a cataclysmic event really happened, and if it led to losing advanced technology and having to rebuild civilization, wouldn't there be some trace of that technology somewhere in the world?
You're thinking maybe hidden within those very structures that seem so advanced for the 19th century.
Exactly. Could those buildings be more than just architectural marvels? What if they're remnants of a civilization with knowledge and abilities far beyond what we can imagine?
That's a pretty mind-blowing concept.
Yeah.
But to understand how such advanced technology might have worked, we need to talk about electromagnetism and, well, the ether.
The ether, huh?
And there's this theory that our ancestors may have figured out how to use a form of energy that we're only starting to rediscover today.
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff. Electromagnetism, the ether, and the possibility of ancient energy grids. This is where it gets really interesting. So before we took a break, we were talking about these incredible structures from the 19th century and how they might be like clues to a forgotten technology, something we've kind of overlooked or dismissed. Maybe a different way of harnessing energy.
Yeah, you mentioned electromagnetism and the ether. And I gotta say, those are concepts that have always intrigued me.
They're fascinating, aren't they?
But how do they connect to these architectural mysteries?
Well, imagine if our ancestors knew how to use electromagnetism on a scale we can barely fathom today.
Okay.
What if those towering structures, those intricate designs, weren't just for looks? What if they were actually functional, like to channel and manipulate energy?
Okay, I'm with you. But first, I think we need to back up a bit.
Sure.
What exactly is the ether?
Right.
And why did mainstream science kind of reject it?
So for a long time, the ether was this big idea in physics. It was thought to be like a medium that filled all of space, a kind of cosmic fluid.
Okay.
And it was believed to carry light waves and electromagnetic energy. You know, think of it like the water in a pond. Just as ripples in the water carry energy, the ether was thought to carry light and electromagnetic waves.
So if it was such a big idea, why did scientists abandon it?
Well, you see, experiments in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, especially one called the Michelson-Morley experiment, they couldn't detect the ether. And that led to Einstein's theory of special relativity, which explained the behavior of light and electromagnetism without needing the ether.
So if mainstream science doesn't really use the ether anymore, why are we talking about it now?
Well, because those who believe in this old world grid theory, they say the ether wasn't disproven, just misunderstood.
Okay.
They argue that it's not some physical substance you can measure. It's more like a subtle energy that interacts with matter and electromagnetism in ways we're only beginning to understand.
So they think that maybe a lost civilization understood the power of this ether.
Right. And they use those grand structures to harness it.
Wow.
They point to the towering spires of cathedrals, the complex geometry of star forts, and those massive arches and domes of ancient buildings as evidence. They think these structures were designed to interact with the ether.
It's really a mind-blowing concept.
That is.
To think that cathedrals, places we associate with religion and spirituality, could have been like antennas or something, channeling energy from this lost technology.
Exactly. And that brings us to another interesting part of this theory, the role of water.
Oh, right.
So many of those old world structures, especially the ones connected to power or energy, are near water.
Right, or they have these elaborate water systems.
Yes. And, you know, I always thought those canals, fountains, and reservoirs were just decorative or, just to provide water for the city.
I did too.
But those who believe in the old world grid theory, they say water played a much bigger role.
Really?
They point out that water is an amazing conductor of electricity.
That's true.
They suggest it might have been used to channel and amplify the energy from the ether.
So instead of just wires and cables, they might have used water. That's an amazing idea.
And not just any water. They talk about living water. Water that's been infused with energy through specific techniques, perhaps using sound or vibration.
Living water. That sounds almost mythical. Is there any actual evidence of this?
There are some interesting examples, like Chatsworth House in England. It has a really complex water system and a conservatory. It was said to generate electricity using water and steam. Sadly, much of that technology has been lost or destroyed, leaving behind just hints.
It's like we're piecing together a puzzle, but so many of the pieces are missing.
I know, right?
But what we do have, the architecture, the way these structures are placed, the water and electromagnetism, it all suggests our understanding of the past might be incomplete.
To really unravel this mystery, we need to go beyond the physical structures. We need to look at the symbolism, the hidden messages our ancestors might have left for us.
You talk about the symbols and motifs on those old world buildings.
Exactly.
The griffins, lions, eagles, crescent moons, we see them everywhere, right? In architecture art, even heraldry.
Yes. And, we often dismiss them as just decoration or religious symbols, but they might have deeper meanings, clues to lost knowledge that's been hidden or misinterpreted.
Like a secret code we need to crack.
Precisely. And one of the keys to understanding this symbolism might be alchemy.
Alchemy. You mean like turning lead into gold? What's that got to do with advanced technology and questioning the globe model?
Yeah, most people associate alchemy with trying to create gold, but there's another side to it. a deep understanding of materials and the energies that connect them.
So it's less about magic and more about the hidden potential of materials and how they interact with energy.
Exactly. And one material that was really important to alchemists was mercury.
Oh yeah, mercury, that silvery liquid metal.
Right. It played a key role in alchemical experiments and symbolism.
You know, it's funny. I remember from chemistry that mercury is a fantastic conductor of electricity. Could that be why alchemists were so interested in it?
That's an excellent observation. Those who believe in the old world grid theory, they think mercury was crucial in how this lost technology generated and transmitted energy.
But how? How would they have used mercury to do that?
Okay, so picture this. Mercury, when exposed to electricity and magnetism, forms a vortex.
A vortex, you mean like a whirlpool?
Similar, but in this case, an electromagnetic vortex. And a vortex is a really powerful way for energy to flow. It's the same principle behind tornadoes and hurricanes, but, on a smaller, more controlled scale.
So are you saying they might have created these mercury vortexes inside those buildings to boost the energy from the ether?
It's a theory, and it's supported by all those octagonal structures found in many old-world buildings. Those octagons, often empty or repurposed, might have housed the engines or chambers where these mercury vortexes were created.
This is getting more and more fascinating. So we've got these structures maybe interacting with the ether, channeling energy through water, and amplifying it with mercury vortexes.
Right, it's like something out of science fiction.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the more we look at the evidence, the more it seems like science, history, and myth all kind of blend together.
And perhaps the most intriguing piece of this whole puzzle, the one that really connects everything, is the moon.
The moon. Wait, are you telling me the moon is involved in all of this?
The moon has always fascinated humans.
Yeah.
But what if the moon isn't what we think it is? What if it's not a solid, rocky sphere orbiting Earth, but something else entirely? Something that could unlock the secrets of our true history and explain these inconsistencies with the globe model.
Okay, now you've really got my attention. Are you suggesting the moon is, I don't know, an illusion?
Yeah.
A hologram?
Not exactly a hologram, but perhaps a projection of sorts. There's a theory that the moon might be a plasma phenomenon. A luminous disk in the sky that reflects light and energy in a very specific way, creating the illusion of a solid sphere.
A plasma phenomenon.
Yes.
But how could that create such a realistic image? And what would be the purpose of it?
Those are great questions. And to answer them, we need to consider some unconventional ideas about our reality, the structure of the cosmos, and maybe even rethink the Earth's shape and size.
So we're back, and we've been talking about some pretty wild stuff, like what if the moon isn't actually a solid, rocky sphere?
It definitely makes you rethink things, doesn't it? We're so used to thinking about the moon in a certain way. It's hard to imagine it being something totally different, a plasma phenomenon.
Yeah, it's a lot to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
But we go with that idea for a second. What does it mean? I mean, how does a plasma moon change our understanding of the cosmos? And how does it fit into all these inconsistencies with the globe model?
Well, those who support this theory, they suggest that the moon could be a reflection of a much bigger Earth, one that goes way beyond the continents and oceans we know.
Wow.
And they point to all those old maps that show a much larger Earth, often with this huge, unexplored area around it.
You're saying those ancient maps, the ones we usually consider myths or fantasies, could actually be accurate.
It's an interesting thought, isn't it? Those maps, they're incredibly detailed. And they're pretty accurate when it comes to the landmasses we know. They hint at a world that's far bigger than what we see. And if the moon is reflecting this larger Earth, well, that opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
So are you saying there could be entire continents, civilizations out there that we don't even know about, like hidden lands just waiting to be discovered?
Exactly. The idea of a world bigger than what we've been told has been around for a long time. It's in ancient myths, explorers' stories. It's like those old maps with here be dragons on the unexplored parts. Maybe there are still dragons out there.
Okay, that's a really cool image. But if the moon is reflecting this bigger Earth, what about all the stuff we see on its surface? The craters, mountains, those dark and light areas, what are those?
Well, the folks who believe in this theory, they think those images aren't physical features. They think it's a composite image.
A composite.
Yeah, like two different pictures layered on top of each other.
Okay.
One picture might be showing the firmament, that's the structure some believe encloses our world. And the other picture, maybe it's like an X-ray of the Earth, showing continents and land masses that are hidden from us.
So the moon's like a giant mirror in the sky, reflecting both the structure of the universe and a secret map of our world.
Precisely. It's like this giant puzzle waiting for us to solve it.
Okay, so we've talked about the moon as a map reflecting a larger Earth. But how does that connect to the inconsistencies of the globe model? Where does the flat Earth idea come in?
That's where it gets really interesting. If we consider the possibility of a much bigger Earth, one that extends way beyond what we've been taught, and if we think about the moon as a reflection of this larger realm, well, then the flat Earth idea takes on a whole new meaning.
I'm listening.
It's not about saying the Earth is flat on a small scale. It's about challenging this idea that the Earth is a spinning ball flying through space.
So maybe instead of a globe, we're on a huge plane enclosed by the firmament, with the moon as this celestial mirror showing us this larger reality.
Exactly. And, while that might sound radical, it actually lines up with a lot of ancient beliefs about the Earth as a stationary plane at the center of everything.
But if the Earth isn't a spinning globe, what about all the other stuff? Gravity, day and night, seasons, all those things we associate with the globe.
Those are important questions.
Yeah.
And the people who support this alternative model, they have explanations for those things.
They do.
They use concepts like electromagnetism, density, and the properties of light.
So instead of gravity pulling everything towards the center of a spinning globe, maybe it's a downward pull towards a denser plane.
Right.
And maybe the sun and moon aren't just these balls of gas and rock, but are actually like celestial magnets.
Yeah.
Or sources of energy that control the tides, the seasons, day and night.
You got it. And I know these explanations might sound a bit strange, but they really show the importance of thinking critically and exploring different viewpoints.
It's definitely a lot to process. But isn't there a risk that by questioning the globe model, we're just opening the door to misinformation and conspiracy theories?
That's a valid concern for sure, but I think the key is to be smart about it, to question everything, do your research, and be open to the possibility that things might be more complicated than we've been led to believe.
I think that's a great point, and it's a perfect place to wrap up our deep dive into the inconsistencies of the globe model. We've covered a lot of ground today, from ancient architecture and lost technologies to the moon as a map and the possibility of a much larger Earth.
And remember, this is just the beginning. There's so much more to learn and discover if we keep asking questions and looking beyond what we think we know.
Exactly. To all our listeners, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep researching, and come to your own conclusions.
Yeah.
What resonates with you? What new questions have popped up for you during this deep dive? Until next time, keep questioning, keep an open mind, and keep searching for the truth.